Thank you very much. The word's agenda, by the way. Did you say Emirates cancel 350s? That's what you get for sleeping in. The fact is, somebody's got a sense of humor here. The fact is, yes, they did. It's not the world's greatest news. Tim does change his mind from time to time. And maybe in a few years, he'll change back to the 350. We still have a lot fewer cancellations than they have in the 787 program. It's not good news commercially, but it certainly has no impact financially. First airplanes are going to deliver in 2019 out to 2023. So as you can imagine, that's pretty far out. First delivery 5 years from now. So maybe I have some time to talk to Tim, and he'll reconsider in a couple of years. Anyway, it is what it is. Life goes on, and the program is still in great shape, as Didier will tell you in a little while. And our market position, even with this impact, is still in pretty good shape. As you can go back to about the last 10, 15 years, we have a relatively stable duopoly here, with the blue line above the gray line more often than not, which is the right way it ought to be. So far this year, a slow year so far, but I think you'll see some orders by the air show. We've got 319 aircraft. That's the different categories that they're in. We should have, Stefan, I believe, handouts of all this, right? So you don't have to take too many notes here. Market share 42%. So far, through this point in time, on a gross basis. Net basis, obviously, is going to be a little bit lower. Backlog, 5,457 airplanes, and yes, as Stefan said, we did take the liberty overnight to change the 350 XWB slide, so that is the net number after cancellation of the order by Emirates. Now, are we building too many airplanes? I'll anticipate some of the questions from some people in the room. Is there a bubble? I don't think so at all. I think that what you're seeing is developing countries, the middle class in China, India, Latin America, and now even Africa and the Middle East coming on strong. This is our production. And I think we've been extremely conservative in terms of how smooth that ramp up is in production. This discipline isn't exactly followed by my colleagues in Seattle, who tend to run production up after order peaks and run it down when orders come back. But I think if you look at us, we can at least say that putting them both together, we're smoothing out that order cycle in the industry. So for those of you who are waiting for the next downturn, it may be a long wait, because if we actually do this right, it may be a leveling off of production and then coming back up, but we don't see and are not forecasting big peaks in orders with peaks in production followed by troughs, the old cyclical industry that we've had over perhaps 30 years, 40 years. In terms of backlog, part of this is of course cushioned by over 10,000 firm orders in the backlog, and that is after 70 of them that just got canceled. It's a growth industry. Every 15 years, it's doubling in size, and that's the average worldwide. Every 15 years. So 15 years ago, this industry was half the size it is today. 15 years from now, it'll be twice the size it is today. And that's a world average. You can imagine in China, in India, in the Middle East, that's growing a lot faster than that. So there's an awful lot of need for new equipment. And if you look at the GDP of the world, and that's the light blue, you can see that there's a correlation between GDP and, of course, revenue passenger kilometers, or available seat kilometers. It comes out to be almost the same thing when you're running very high load factors. And during the recession, of course, if GDP is going to collapse, you're going to see a collapse in RPKs or ASKs. But as GDP recovers, you'll see a recovery as well. So if anybody in the room, or you're talking to some of those talking heads on television who say there is going to be a big downturn in aviation coming, well, ask them what their forecast is for GDP growth. If they're not forecasting a big collapse in GDP, then you're not going to have a collapse in aviation. It's as simple as that, because GDP and aviation are becoming so intertwined in a modern economy. There's another thing that's happening. Despite the fact that everyone talks about fragmentation, and remember, 15 years ago, there's a lot of stories about we'll all be running around point to point and little 30, 40, 50 seat jets. Well, that didn't really turn out very well. In fact, those small jets were only really useful to get around union rules, where if you got above a certain level in seat capacity, you had to pay, in most airlines, the union rules for union wages for the higher capacity aircraft. Well, you can change union contracts a lot faster than you can change your fleet. So that really never worked. What we've been seeing year after year after year is a consolidation. More big cities. Big cities are hubs. If you remember reading about a year ago, China just crossed the line. We're over half the population now, and that's the population of 1.3 to 1.4 billion people. Half are now in large urban areas. Well, connecting large urban areas, point to point, can be done by trains. In some parts of the world that doesn't work very well. But most efficiently, it can be done by aircraft. And if you look at today, you've got 42 megacities accounting for over 90% of all the long-haul traffic. That's the little blue dots on the screen there. What happens in 20 years? Almost all, 99% of all the long-haul international traffic is going to be connecting about 90 megacities around the world. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing the need for bigger aircraft. That's why you see aircraft like the 319 and 737-700 not selling very well anymore, because they're in that 120, 130 seat category, and the average size of aircraft has been moving up. Every year it gets slightly larger. And of course, we have the largest aircraft in the world, the A380. 15 years from now, we'll have double the number of RPKs in the world. You're not going to do that with double the number of flights. We have to have more aircraft like the A380. And of course, we have, if I could just comment a little bit as way of introduction, before we get into a Q&A, our product line, over 10,000 sales for a program that was supposed to sell 600 to 700 aircraft when it was designed in the early to mid-1980s, entering service in 1988. 10,300 sold, 6,000 delivered with a 4,000 aircraft backlog. Every 2 seconds while I'm talking, every 2 seconds an A320 is taking off or landing somewhere in the world. And here's an interesting chart. We talk about why we're maintaining a strong market position. Oh, that was noisy out there. Look at the passenger fleet of 737s in the world. Look at the passenger fleet of A320s in the world. Remember, the other guy got a 21-year head start on us. A 21-year head start on us, and we're up there with a larger in-service fleet of passenger aircraft on the single aisle. That's because our aircraft is selling better and it's delivering better, and we expect to maintain that lead with our Neo versus their Max. And that's really a very interesting story. 15% lower fuel consumption, more range. An airplane that, whatever you want to say, and I don't want to get into a debate here today about where we are versus Boeing and everything else. I'll let the order numbers speak for themselves. The airlines believe that we've got a better product, and they're ordering it in larger quantities, and they're ordering the other guy's product. Now, the airlines aren't stupid. They look at a few basic things. We have a larger fan. But when we improve to our Neo, it gets even better. That's higher bypass ratio. That means more efficiency going forward. We also have an airplane that's 1.6 tons lighter. Today, the A320 and the 737-8 or 800 are about equal in weight. Boeing tries to say that we're a little bit heavier because they try in their comparison to put in extra heavy seats. We don't build the seats. That's buyer-furnished equipment. You put in whatever seat you want. The fact is, any airline will tell you they're equal in weight. Well, what happens going forward here is that they add 3.2 tons and we add 1.8 tons. It's really simple math. They added 3.2 2 tons, we added 1.8 tons, and guess whose airplane comes out lighter in the Neo versus the Max? With all the glossy brochures out of Seattle, you can't change that reality, which is why we're looking at about a 60-40 split in the marketplace. We used to have about a 50-50 split with the A320 versus the NG, A320 family, and now with the Neo versus the Max, it's looking like about a 60-40 split. I think you'll see that going forward. We don't have as many unidentified customers. I don't know where all these unidentified customers are coming from that the other guys got, but whenever a customer doesn't want to be identified, there's usually a reason or contingency in there. Another interesting thing, I've got 44 A320 COs converted out of 2,700 into Neos. They've got about 229 of theirs. Over 10% of their order book is actually conversions from their existing backlog. And we think we have a nice product here. This is the 2-seat configuration with 124-seat, 150-seat, 185-seat configurations. But some of you may not have gotten the word, but we now have an extra 9 seats in the A320. So from 180, we can now go to 189 seats, the exact same as you can get in a 737. There was a little bit of a seat count game going on in the past. Now the maximum capacity are the same. And we've got about 25 more seats in our A321 than they've got in their Dash 9. We can take that up on the Neo to 240 seats. It's a little cramped, but you know, for a low-cost carrier, you can drive the seat low cost through the floor. If you look at this program, 2,000 sales to the A321, they've got about half that number for their 737-9. And again, rather than getting into a debate about you know, extra 0.5% here or 1% there or 2% there, let the airlines speak for themselves. 8 all 737 operators have taken the opportunity now to switch from the 737 to the Neo, and look what's happening here. I can't win them all, but 2 have gone the other way. Only 2, and I think the Air Canada was probably due to the fact we weren't paying attention. So the order book is really driven by the customers, and they're the ones voting. Now, I know when I open it up to Q&A, we're going to get a question, well, it's very nice. You and Boeing are sharing this whole market, but what about the new starts? What about China? What about Russia? What about third world countries saying they want to build airplanes too? Well, Europe wasn't exactly a third world when we started out with the Airbus product back in 1970. But it takes an awful long time in this industry to build up a product line, reliability, support organization, etc. If you look at the history of Airbus, for the first 25 years, we sold about 2,000 aircraft. About 2,000 aircraft in the first 25 years, 14%. That reality is going to be faced by any new start into the market. Once you get your airplane design, let's say it's a 150-seater, you've got a one-off airplane. Well, as McDonnell Douglas and Lockheed proved, you can't have even a good airplane and have one airplane and go up against a competitor with a family of airplanes. So then you're going to have to stretch that airplane. Then you'll probably have to shrink that airplane. Then you might have to make a wide body for your product line as well. You'll have to build a massive international support organization. Can it be done? Will the Chinese do it in 20 years? I believe in 20 to 25 years, they'll be a major competitor in the world market. But it's really going to take 20 to 25 years to become a competitor, just like it took us about 25 years to become a competitor as well. And then our wide body demand. I know that everyone is willing to concede that, well, maybe Airbus is a bit ahead on the single aisle, but everybody knows Boeing dominates the wide body. Just go back and do the math. Go back to the launch of the A350, back about 2007, 2008. Add up all the numbers for all the wide bodies, net of any cancellation, including the one that you've got last night. And you're going to see that we're about equal. Actually, technically, we're ahead of it, but they haven't put a few orders that they know into the order book, so it's roughly equal. We're about equal in wide bodies, and we definitely are dominating the single aisle market. The A330 is one of the reasons for that. 1,300 aircraft. Every 22 seconds, an A330 takes off and lands somewhere in the world with 99.5% dispatch reliability. That's impressive. And what about these aircraft like the A350, the 787? Aren't they going to replace the A330? Well, they've had an awful long time to try to replace it, and we've actually, since the launch of our own A350, we've sold more than half of all the airplanes. And it's certainly true since the launch of the 787. So in the face of an alternative like 787s and A350, the A330 still sells very well, and we expect it to continue doing so in the future. We are bringing out the 242-ton version of that airplane with capabilities of New York to Tokyo, if you want it, with max packs on the airplane. Available in May of 2015. Then the other end, we have the A330 Regional, 199 tons, optimized for 2.5, 3 hours flying. For India, for China, for a lot of regional routes. You're not going to be able to double the traffic in less than 10 years in China, the domestic market, if you don't have larger aircraft. You can't just double the number of flights. For those of you who travel regularly, get in to see Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, go down the list. These are airports that are relatively new, that are getting saturated already. Imagine in less than 10 years, doubling the traffic. It can only be done with larger aircraft. And then of course we have the A350 XWB, 25% lower cost than the 777-300. That's the reason why you saw the 777X being introduced. It's a very, very impressive airplane. As you watch the presentations today, you'll probably see it taking off or landing as we're continuing with the flight test program. 742 net orders right now, 38 customers worldwide, entering service by the end of this year. In fact, we're hoping for certification in not too many months from now. Now, before again, you talk about, well, cancellations. You had a few cancellations. Yes, we have a few less than the other guy has in terms of cancellations, but it's probably not that relevant for either one of us, because look at the size of the market. Here's small twins, and on the right-hand side, you've got large twins. The gray at the bottom is what's in the firm order book right now between Boeing and Airbus for all model types, for 777Xs, 380s that fall into that category, 350s, 330s. As you can see, it's a market of 6,800 twins, and right now, over 4,000 haven't been bought. So there is a very big market going forward. In terms of the 350 XWB, 25% less fuel burn, carbon fiber product. It's going to have the lightest material airframe out there in the marketplace right now. But the one thing I would like to dwell on is it'll have the most comfortable interior. You can look at it over there. You can try for yourself. Don't take my marketing word for it. We've got in there 17-inch seats, and we've got 18-inch seats. Now, perhaps I'm not typical, but I don't fit into a 17-inch seat. I said that to Willie Walsh once. He said, but you don't fly in economy anyway. But the fact is, when I retire, I will, and I want to be able to fit in the seats. It also has a big effect on comfort. A 17-inch seat, one being offered and promoted today on the 777X, being promoted today as the economy class seat on the 787, with almost all the airlines now moving towards that, is narrower than the seat you'll find on most commuter jets. Narrower than the seat on a commuter jet where you expect to fly for an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Instead, they're asking you to fly 10 hours in it. It just doesn't work. I don't think you'll see it working going forward. We have a product line that we think is going to really work well. I've got a slide coming up here about seat width, but I think it bounced ahead a little bit. The other thing I'd like to talk about is just, do we have a competitor to the 787-10? Yes, we do. We think we have a very good competitor. It's called our A350-900. Now, some people say, yes, but isn't it a little bit bigger, a little bit more range? Well, it's about the same size. You can see the seat line there. In fact, we even give Boeing, if you want to squeeze in a 9 abreast at 16.9-inch seats, compared to our 8, you can get maybe 15, 16 more seats in the airplane. But you have about the same range payload until we add a little bit more on the right-hand side of the chart. And what can you do with that? Well, you could go about another 1,600 nautical miles with the same number of people, or for the same range, you could add 16 tons of cargo. Gives you a lot of flexibility. Now suppose you came to me and said, yeah, but I really don't need the extra range and I don't need the extra cargo capability. Well, it just so happens we'll derate the engine and give you a lower weight version of 5900, and it sits exactly in a range payload chart right on top of the 787-10. So all this sort of brochure hype about a unique market niche for that airplane, well, they've forgotten that there's another airplane out there selling pretty well against it. 777-300ER, that's the story that really got the industry moving. 777-300ER is a very good airplane. I know. I competed against it with 340s, and it came out ahead. Lower fuel burn, the two engines, same range, a little bit wider cabin, a little bit more room, more seats. But then, of course, every dog has its day, and your competitor comes out with a better product. So we have an airplane that could actually fly, well, let's say, Singapore to London, and we could do that 40 tons lighter, burning 25% less fuel. Half of that 40 tons is a lighter structure, and the other half is fuel you don't need to burn en route. And by the way, you do have the same number of passengers on board the airplane. It's the reason why the 777X came out, because today's 777-300 cannot compete with the 350-1000, so they had to do something else. One of the things they did was add more seats to the airplane, because if you're computing seat mile cost, if you add more seats, have your higher trip cost, you will drive down the seat mile cost. But at a very interesting number you should look up. Our 350-1000 is already 20 tons lighter than a 777-300. Their 777X is 15 tons heavier, because you got to stretch it, you got this big wing on it, etc. But you got 35 more seats in the airplane, but those 35 more seats come at a cost of 35 tons heavier airplane you're going to have to push through the air. That means more thrust, that means more fuel burn, more maintenance cost. So we think our 350-1000, just the way it is right now, is a very good competitor for what we have to face in the marketplace. And then if you really do want more seats, we have our own A380. Now there's an interesting airplane. It hasn't always been optimized. Some of the interiors that some of the airlines have put in, they admit that, well, maybe we got a bit carried away in terms of not really using all the space we could have as effectively as we could have. In most any airline configuration, our specialists can go in now and actually put about 50 more seats into the airplane. That, of course, drives seat mile costs down without changing anything about the airplane itself. 324 orders, 132 deliveries. The route, by the way, on average is about 13 hours that people are flying this. And as long as we're mentioning Tim, we'll use a quote here where he says something positive about Airbus. The A380 is by far the most popular aircraft that Emirates flies. By the way, this is true in just about any airline CEO you talk to. They will say the most popular airplane that they've got is the 380. Customers go out of their way to fly on an A380. And this is the seat chart that I was hoping had been moved a little bit further forward, but I'll use it now. There was a standard in seat width that we were showing over there that was established back in the 1950s, and it was around that 17 inches, 17 point something. You know where they got it from? It was a study that they did of fighter pilots. Now, if you remember, fighter pilots are usually small people, because you wanted to have an intelligent person. Small people tend to be more intelligent than bigger people. It's a very well-known fact. They also had to be thin. And they did a study of fighter pilots, and they came up with the dimensions of the hip ratio and the shoulders and the butt and everything. And they figured, yeah, they could fit into 17-inch seats pretty comfortably. But that isn't the rest of us, and it isn't the 1950s anymore. We've all gotten slightly wider. So what happened as we went forward into the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s, the manufacturers realized this. So 18 inches became the standard. And try it out for yourself right over there. A300, the 787, the A320, 767, right? 777, 380. Even the original 787 wasn't going to be 9 abreast, it was going to be 8 abreast. Go back and look at all their early marketing literature. Had 8 abreast in the airplane. it was at least 18 inches. And on the A380, you could get 18 and a half. 777, when you didn't have 10 abreast and 9 abreast, you could have 18 and a half. It was a comfortable interior. And now, in an attempt to try to compete with other aircraft that perhaps have lower inherent trip cost, some manufacturers are trying to persuade the airline to jam more seats into an airplane. And by putting more seats, you have a bigger number to divide into the same trip cost, and you can get a lower seat mile cost. But it's going too far. A 9 abreast 787 is under 17-inch seat in most configurations. Go out there and measure it. A 777X is sitting right around 17 inches, maybe a little bit above, but not much. That might work in a commuter configuration for an hour flight. It doesn't work for 10, 11, 12, 14 hours. Go in there and try it yourself. Now here's another interesting comment that was made by a CEO of an airline operating the A380. It was Willie. And he was looking at his flights to Los Angeles from Heathrow. He has 3 a day, 747s. He replaces that with 2 A380s. Now his market share goes up because people prefer the A380. His passengers are happier because they prefer the A380, but his cost went down by about 20%. So that drops right to the bottom line. That's what we can do. Move the same number of people with fewer aircraft movements. That's how we're going to be able to handle, in 15 years, a doubling in the number of RPKs and ASKs in the world. And can you fill up this airplane? We just asked a group of our airlines, what sort of load factor on average, not at peak times, on average, are you getting with your fleet of A380s? Despite the fact it's the biggest commercial airliner flying today, Malaysia, the high 80s. Lufthansa, beyond 90%. This is the average. Korean Air, close to 90%. Emirates, 90%. Singapore, greater than 80. Thai, in the 80s. Air France, about 80%. Asian Airlines, they're just booking now. We delivered from this very room their first airplane about a week ago, and their bookings are running over 90% on the airplane. It's a big airplane, but passengers seek it out. They want to fly it. It's the most comfortable airplane flying today. It's the quietest airplane flying today. It's the airplane that is preferred by the traveling public. Well, we have a future that we're very happy with the A380 at the top, with our A350 about to get its type certificate in a few months and enter service this year, and of course the single aisle and the rest of the product line. We think we're very well positioned for the years going forward. Now, I'm sure you must have 1 or 2 questions for me, so I believe I've got a few minutes here to answer some questions.
Thank you, John. And now we are happy to take your questions. Over there, please.
And now we're going to have to get somebody with a microphone, or the rest of us aren't going to.
We start in here with Tim.
Okay.
Hi, John. Tim Heifer from Reuters. John, was the...
I'm sorry, who are you in?
I'm with...
Oh, okay.
The other big brand.
Okay.
Was this A350 cancellation part of the framework for the A380 order in Dubai? Was the fleet requirement review that you talk about underway there?
I cannot go into commercial discussions about contracts which are confidential. But I can tell you that had it been canceled last year, we would have reported it as canceled. So it was canceled just recently. See, they turned off your microphone. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
So was this the price for saving the A380?
Is that, are you leading the witness here or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes,
No. Again, I think Tim has made it very clear that the A380 is his best airplane, his most profitable airplane. He is talking about buying more of them. He's encouraging us to re-engine the aircraft. Again, I don't want to put words in his mouth. Go ask him.
Next question goes to our colleague.
Why are we technically incompetent in the back? Can we turn the microphones on?
Can we have please the sound on the microphone here? And please mention your name and media, please.
Dimitar Stavra from Bulgaria. My question is, will be there a new engine option for A380?
For A380?
Yes.
At the present time, we are not planning to do it, but of course, when your largest customer is encouraging you to study it, we of course will study it. We have made no commitment to do so.
Thank you.
Next question goes to Andrea Rosman.
Hello? Hello, John. I understand that tomorrow you're going to be helping Amadeo at a presentation in New York, which will be to equity analysts and other people in the financial community about the value of the A380. Is this the first time you've actually gone in with a lessor to help talk up the merits of a plane? And can you tell me exactly who you're speaking to and what your message will be?
Well, this is the second time we've done it, and it's also with Emirates, by the way, where we are bringing some people out to JFK to listen to some eloquent presentations about the merits of the airplane, and then we're going to go take a ride around the New York area in an Emirates A380, which Tim has been kind enough to loan to us. So we did this once before, a couple of years back. It was very well received by the investor community. I believe Bloomberg's even going to come. So, are you flying over for it? You should. You can come with me on an A380. I'm flying an A380.
Next question goes to David Flynn.
Hello, David Flynn from Australian Business Travel.
Can we have please the mic turned on?
Thank you.
The trouble is you're not saying it in French. Why don't you ask in French to turn on the microphone?
Thank you, David Flynn from Australian Business Travel. I'm curious, did you have any indication that Emirates was looking to cancel the A350 order, and when did you first find out about this?
Well,
Surely that's not commercial.
I first found out about it when we announced it publicly, because that's when we have a contract canceled, we would announce it publicly. Did I know that Tim was reviewing his fleet plan? Tim's always reviewing his fleet plan, so yes, I was aware that Tim was reviewing his fleet plan.
Next question goes to Karen Walker, ATV.
Hi, John. Karen.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Hi there. Karen Walker, Air Transport World. John, so with how does this work with the other airline customers for the A350 in terms of being able to maybe move people's slots up and deliveries? Are you working that side of the...
You mean looking at a positive? Yes, there are some people who would like to have 2019, 2020 slots, and we could be talking to them. There's certainly going to be no hole in the production or anything on that. And remember, Tim's first delivery was 5 years from now, so it was quite a way out.
Next question goes
And who knows, between now and then he could change his mind again.
Next question goes to Sebastian Steinke.
Good morning, Sebastian Steinke from Flugrevue in Germany, up to the last row.
Oh, okay.
My question is the Emirates decision related to any possible new performance data?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
No. We have not issued any new performance data on there.
Next question goes to Tim Robinson.
Hi there, Tim Robinson from Aerospace. John, on the A330 Neo, or potential A330 Neo, a few years ago your customers told you they didn't want a warmed up A330. You went back to the drawing board, came back with the A350. Now after you've got the A350 ready, some customers are saying that they might want a rehashed A330 with new engines after all. So my question is, do customers really know what they want?
It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Those same customers told us that we don't want any more 330s, and I actually had, which became humorous around here, a production forecast with the A330 falling off over the last years, and look what happened. Since we launched the 350XWB, we've doubled the number of orders for the A330 going forward. So sometimes when people shoot off the top of their head that I want the all-new, all-singing and dancing carbon fiber airplane, they really are just shooting from the hip. What they really mean is I want the most comfortable airplane, I want an airplane with the best seat mile cost, I want the airplane with the highest reliability, and the one thing that the A330 really benefited from, and I thank Boeing for this, because when Boeing came out with their all-new 787, what were you going to compete it against? You had to draw up a spreadsheet, and you had to plug an airplane in. They said that they were going to replace the A330. So the airlines took them at their word. They plugged in an A330, and lo and behold, the airplane looks pretty good, which is why we doubled the number of orders of A330s. So I do thank the previous commercial director in Seattle for that.
Next question goes to FT.
Where's FT?
Yes, and after.
Ah, there you are. Yeah.
Is that working? Can you hear me all right?
About as well as they do around here.
Okay, so could you confirm that this is Airbus's largest ever order cancellation with Emirates? And by my reckoning, this is about 9% of the A350 order backlog. So do you think it's going to dent sales efforts going forward? And then separate question, just following on from Tim, if I may. Can you just clarify whether you're serious about an A330 Neo, please?
Well, on the 350, it's never good news when someone cancels an order, but if he's doing it because his fleet planning needs have changed and he's looking for aircraft in different size categories, I don't think it'll have any impact at all. And I do congratulate my colleagues in Seattle who have had about 50% more cancellations than I've got, even with this cancellation, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down the 787, so I'm not particularly worried about it. I think we would, but our finance department, our production people, would be worried if they had airplanes delivering next year or the year after, but 5 years out to 2023, that won't have any impact.
And on the 330?
On 330 Neo, it's an interesting idea. We go back and forth on it. We have to look at the money we're going to invest. We have to look at the, some cannibalization that it would cause of our own 350 program. I don't mind cannibalizing my competitors' programs, but we have to be careful about cannibalizing our own. And the argument is, if we do it, it will be bringing out an airplane that will have the same number of seats as a 787-9. And you could argue, in fact, I might argue, I've got a few more seats, Boeing might argue a few more seats, and I think any airline will say same number of seats in a two-class configuration. My seat, of course, will be 18 inches. Their seat will be 17 or smaller in the economy class section of the airplane. They'll have about 1,000 miles more range, because I won't have all the range, but I'll cover 90%, 92% of all the routes that they can cover around the world. But they'll have a little bit more range than we'll have. But we'll have about the same fuel burn, the same cash operating cost, and of course higher reliability, because we're based on the 99.4% dispatch reliability. Now that will be a very interesting equation. Wider coach seat, if I don't need that extra 1,000 miles of range, same fuel burn, cash operating cost as the new all-singing, dancing airplane. The same interior, by the way. You get the same mood lighting, the same BFE, the exact same seats, except of course mine's wider. And I'll have much lower capital cost. That's why they're a little bit concerned in Seattle about the airplane. We know it would be an interesting thing to do, but again, we're publicly traded. We've got to look at rate of return on all of our projects. We've got to look at, do we have the resources to get it done? Remember, we've got several versions of the A350 yet to finish, and there are other alternatives of projects to look at. So all of this is being discussed and debated internally. Studies being done. Our board will be involved, and we'll decide the way forward. But I know a lot of you are predicting it'll happen at Farnborough. It may not happen by Farnborough. There's nothing magic about it decided by Farnborough.
Next question here, front row.
Yeah, hello, Shireen from the national newspaper in the UAE, and my question regarding Qatar Airways. They were supposed to receive their first A380 last week, and there was a delay for some specifications. So can we go into details? What caused the delay and when it's expected to deliver?
I'd say ask Akbar. Whenever you're delivering an airplane, you have your inspectors. If you don't like some items, I know there were some issues on some painting and the rest that had to be redone. This is the typical and normal course of business. I don't think there's anything there.
When would they get it?
Hmm?
When would they receive it?
Oh, in the next couple of weeks.
Next question over there.
Hello, Nayeli Ortigosa from Mexico. I would like to know, in your presentation you said that Mexico is becoming one of the mega cities in 18 years. I would like to know if you are planning some investments in order to accomplish this growing in our country.
Well, I think Mexico and all of Latin America have very strong markets. we have a lot of aircraft flying in Mexico, but infrastructure investments need to be done by, again, the government. And I think that in Mexico, more infrastructure would certainly be helpful. A lot of airlines are now starting up. A lot of airlines are flying, or will soon be flying, the A320 family of aircraft. And to keep up with that, I think we need more infrastructure investment in Mexico, as we do in most parts of the world.
Next question to the German news via DPA.
Steffen Weyer, good morning. Hello?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Here? In the middle?
Okay.
Hi. Question concerning the A350. Are you already talking to airlines which orders would cover the empty slots, about 70? And the other question is, do you earn money from such a cancellation as of Emirates, because they have paid a commission and don't get it back?
Again, whatever is in the contract is confidential. And in terms of those order positions, especially the early ones, there's already a queue of people that the announcement was made a couple hours ago who are expressing interest in could we have those slots.
Next question here from North. Good morning, John.
Sebastián Valdenegro from Diario Financiero of Chile. During your presentation, you talked about developed markets, but you didn't talk about much about Latin America. I'd like to ask you what's your forecast for Latin America, which one are your favorite markets over there, and your specific opinion about Chile, considering that we're in the middle of an economic slowdown back there.
Well, I have very high hopes for Latin America. I can remember when I came over here about 20 years ago as commercial director, we had about 60%, or I think it was actually 1 year we started out, we had 66% market share. And my head of sales, who is still the head of sales for Latin America, Rafael Alonso, said 66% market share. I was very proud of him until I realized that he'd sold 4 airplanes out of 6 into Latin America. You think about the hundreds of airplanes now going into Latin America. The growth in 20 years has been enormous. It has helped the GDPs of the countries. It is, and I'll mention some names, the Cuerdo family and the brothers down there, Enrique, and his team have done a fantastic job with Land Chile in terms of boosting air travel around the world. And then, of course, they merged with TAM in Brazil, and they're creating one of the world's largest airlines. I'm very encouraged by what's already happened in Latin America, and I look forward to many years of continued growth. I think they're doing a great job.
Next question.
Hi John, this is Srinivasan from Cruising Heights in Delhi. Given the option, which is likely to go forward first, the A330neo or the A380neo, if I can call it?
You're going to have to ask a fellow Indian who's on our board, Mr. Mittal. These are debates you have to look at internally. So, but no, I'm not going to comment on that.